Welcome.
To the Age of Awakening.
Please identify yourself. Enter.
Triple P Nation. Do you have kids? Guys, do you have kids out there? Grandparents, do you have kids? Well, if you're a grandparent, you have kids. Or do you know kids? This is really an episode you're going to want to pull up a seat and listen to, because I'm talking to this week Titania Jordan. And Titania is a tech executive. She's also a parenting expert, an author, speaker, and she's also an advocate for child online safety. And she currently serves as the Chief Parent Officer of Bark Technologies. And her latest book, Parental Control, A Guide to Raising Balanced Kids in the Digital Era, is something you really need to know and learn about. Her company, or the company she works with, bark.us, which is a website, by the way, is innovating ways to keep your kids safe in a digital era. Because let's face it, if you have young kids, you've been faced already with the device, babysitting with a device, distracting your kids so you can get the house cleaned up or make that phone call, whatever it might be. We're going to get into how that is contributing to so many of the issues our kids are dealing with today, like expansive and explosive anxiety and depression rates. We're going to be talking about online bullying. We're going to be talking about even if your kids go online and they have no intention to do anything nefarious, there are people out there who are looking to get in front of your kids, and they're doing some pretty nasty things. And then, of course, there's the social media companies with their algorithms who keep showing your kids the things that they search over and over and over to keep them online and dead scrolling for hours and hours and hours. And how the amount of time they are spending online each day is affecting their emotional and intellectual development. There is some really important data that Tanya is going to share with you. But more importantly, we're going to give you some tools that you can access so you can gain control and take control of your kids' mental, emotional, and physical well being. Because these devices, more importantly, the digital world is not leading to healthy kids, and the stats are proving it. Titania will review those with us. So make sure, uh, again, if you know a parent, if you are a parent, share this with as many people as you can, because you are having these conversations without question. They're being had at home, they're being had at school, they're being had amongst your friends. And so many of us don't know how to approach this. Look, even the experts are saying that your kids should not be online at least until the age of 16. Now, it doesn't mean they can't have a device, but there are devices out there that are putting controls, that are limiting the access, that are protecting your kids. And we're going to talk about that also here today. So enjoy my interview with Titania Jordan. Triple P Nation got a fabulous guest for you today. Her name is Titania Jordan. As I mentioned in my opener, she's the author of the Amazon bestselling book, Parental Control, A Guide to Raising Balanced Kids in the Digital Era. And as you and I were talking when you first came on, this is a topic that I'm keenly interested in because of the impact that it's having on our kids developing. And so having you as an expert and some solutions that our parents can and grandparents can perhaps have as resources is exciting for me. And I know it's for my listeners. So welcome, Tatiana.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So first, let's get into how did you get into this? I don't know if for personal experience or you just saw where the ball was going or was paying attention to some of the research. So how did this all come about?
Wow. Um, uh, for me personally, it's a trajectory of, I think, my faith in terms of I feel like there's a plan for my life and everyone's life, and despite my best efforts to uh, mess it up, I keep getting redirected back to this is what I'm supposed to do with my life, And so that's my personal. In terms of the literal, how did this happen? I was born in the 80s. And so I understood what it was like to live in an analog world. And then when I was in my later teens and college and professional career, got introduced to the internet and social media. And I at least had the opportunity to see the world with an adult mind. See the social media, you know what I mean? It's like our kids today, they're younger and they can't process it yet. So at least I could see it from that lens. Um, and my generation, specifically those born around the time I was, they're the last generation that are ever going to have that analog childhood, digital rest of their lives. So I'm uniquely positioned just by when I was born. I've always been interested in how things work and why they do. So I've always been interested in technology, despite not being an engineer. Um, and my career just kept bringing me back to, a path around tech. In the book, you'll hear about my personal story as a survivor of childhood sexual abuse. And so being uniquely positioned to understand how these bad things can happen to good kids and kids in loving homes, um, I think positions me also uniquely to help raise awareness and reduce the stigma and then shine the light on where it's happening even more so online.
Yeah, it's almost you can't go a week or two without hearing some devastating story of some child, whether it's let's say an elementary or a preteen or a teenager, being uh, pursued online
Mhm.
by actors who have bad intentions. So let's really establish how significant is this? What is some of the research that you are aware of as the effects of social media, the digital era on kids' minds and developing brains?
We don't have enough time to cover it. There's because there's so much. I'll start with a high
Sure.
level. You know, the United States of America has like the top doctor called the Surgeon General, right? And the US Surgeon General said that social media deserves a warning label just like that lives on a pack of cigarettes, for example. So we'll go with that, right? Everybody listening can understand if the nation's top doctor says you need a warning label for something, much like cigarettes, it's bad. So there's that. In terms of actual numbers, um, every year at Bark Technologies, we run a report. We help to protect over 7.5 million children across the nation. And because of that, we're connected to children's devices, social media accounts, text, browsing history, gaming, all of that. We get a lot of anonymized data. So we know the rate at which children are being harmed online. And because of that, I'm just going to give you a few stats um, regarding self harm and suicide. Just over 2024, 37% of tweens and 60% of teens were involved in a self harm or suicidal situation. When it comes to predators, 4% of tweens and 7% of teens encountered predatory behaviors from someone online. Disordered eating, 11% of tweens, 25% of teens. Drug and alcohol, 63% of tweens, 78% of teens. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And we can talk about this in a minute, but a lot of parents don't realize when you're saying yes to Snapchat for your teenager, you're also saying yes to people trying to sell your child drugs that could be laced with fentanyl.
Wow, you're right. There is so much there, and it's a lot to unwrap. I would imagine there are good kids who are surfing the internet who have no intention of being a part of some nefarious actor or behavior who get caught up. And I don't know if you have statistics for that. So I think what I want to emphasize is it just isn't kids who are seeking things like that. It's good kids who are being exposed to it as well too. Isn't that correct?
Exactly. That is, sure, there are going to be many children who proactively seek to make, bad choices or risky decisions because the frontal lobes of their brains aren't fully formed yet before they're in their early to mid 20s. Speaking as somebody who made bad choices, and turned out semi okay. But yes, children can be innocently using the family iPad or using a smartphone, just searching the internet again innocently or trying to be on Pinterest innocently or even on Instagram innocently. And these bad things bad content and bad people get surfaced to these kids for a variety of reasons. The bad people, well, they know where the kids are and they're going to go find them and groom them. The bad content, that speaks more to the algorithm. These social media platforms generate revenue the more time we spend inside of them. So they're going to show us the things that will keep us in them as long as possible. And so a lot of times that means graphic, violent, sexual content or other content that sends children down dangerous rabbit holes mentally.
So, as we had discussed when you first came on, we talked about this process called neuroplasticity, and the young
Yeah.
developing mind, when exposed to certain things, the more they get exposed to it, it literally wires their brain, almost like a drug, to crave that dopamine response and that input over and over and over again. And you talked about the algorithms; they know exactly what they're doing as it
Mhm.
relates to the things that light your brain up, that excite you. Again, whether it's a golf video or how to make fun desserts or something worse, right? Sexual or drugs or things like that too. And I mean, kids in general, they're inquisitive, right? They want to explore and well, this is no harm here. And it's, you know, y- so what scares you about this? More importantly, where is your greatest concern in the present and in the future if we don't do something to gather control um, of our kids' use?
My greatest concern is parents using tech as a babysitter or a pacifier. And I'm speaking as a parent who did that. My son's 16 and when he was younger I didn't realize how harmful the tool was that was keeping him quiet while I could take a, work call or sit at dinner calmly and quietly. Um so, parents, it's so hard to be a parent. It's so overwhelming. Kids are a wild card, right? And so we're handing them these pieces of tech that are lighting up the pleasure centers of their brain and ensuring that they don't find as much pleasure or satisfaction in the real world with real books, real toys, real humans. So we've got to stop that. We have got to delay, delay, delay at our expense of comforted peace and quiet for our child's best interest. Now, what I am encouraged by is that more and more parents are realizing this scientific fact and starting to do the hard work of doing that. And so all is not lost. Childhood is not doomed if the trend continues to delay.
So the things that I've observed as well too is, um, and you can't blanket this statement, but it's an observation, is when kids are playing on devices and as opposed to interacting with friends, peer groups, adults, whatever the case may be, they're lacking the development of very, very important social skills.
Yes.
Has that become a trend? Have you noticed? And then I'll have a comment, my observation with that. I'd like to hear what you have to say.
Oh, absolutely. When you are interacting on a screen, you are not understanding tone, voice tone, nuance, facial configuration, how a body might tense up or relax. Um, there's so much that you miss out. Also, so many kids are keyboard warriors. They're brave enough to say it uh, by typing it, but they wouldn't ever say that in person. You can't give a child an adult tool and expect them to act like an adult just because you've given them an adult tool. So even when we're talking about, let's say, typing notes in school versus writing them out, it activates a different part of your brain and your memory. And again, data shows that the physical writing and reading and in real life interpersonal communications are critical parts of childhood development that should not be replaced by a screen.
Agree with that. And the reason I asked that question, as somebody who owns multiple businesses, when I get young people coming in applying for positions, again, I don't know if it's that old guy thing, like where it's just, doesn't anybody have basic communication skills any longer? Even the ability to hold your gaze, you know? to have a conversation and to express themselves in a in a professional manner. That's my observation. And again, I don't know if this is directly a link due to the fact that the amount of social media and digital use that's been really propagated in our society over the last decade or so. If now we're starting to see the results of that.
Yeah, there are so many studies that are, in the works still, because it's such a new phenomenon of younger and younger children getting this sort of unprecedented access for very significant periods of time each day. Um, but as humans, just using common sense, we can all agree that if you are physically able to move your body, you should not be sedentary for more than 2 hours at a time, doing anything, especially a child.
So you mentioned using devices as babysitters. Um, and then kinda getting back to the old school parenting where you know what I mean? Put them outside, get them some toys, ride your bike, call some friends. Again, I'm older than you are, but I remember back in the day, you get a bunch of friends, you get on the phone, and you're gonna meet at the ballpark, and you're there all afternoon. No parents. And so if there was a disagreement, you had to solve those problems amongst yourself. There wasn't parents around to solve the problems for you. So it literally created problem solving skills at an early age, how to compromise, how to, whatever it took. So it's, I would imagine that that's a contributing factor as well too. I want to ask you, how prevalent is bullying?
Oh my gosh. It I'm gonna go back to the annual report, to quote stats just from 2024, and it's heartbreaking. 71% of tweens and 77% of teens experienced bullying either as the bully themselves, the victim, or the witness. And that number's so high, I think, specifically because of that witness factor. A lot of bullying happens on group chats. So there's 20 kids on a text thread or a Snapchat group, etc., and they're just watching their peers be so unkind and hateful to one another. And that's what they're learning. That's learned behavior.
Sure. So, what is your recommendation as far as how a child or a teen should handle either being bullied, witnessing being bullied, or obviously, avoid being the bully themselves? Is there some suggestions that maybe parents can learn to teach their kids?
You know, there's one part of this answer that is really hard for me because I just don't inherently understand being unkind to another human. I don't get it. And if I could solve for just teaching children basic kindness to one another, like, that would be amazing, right? So I don't get it. But that part of my brain and heart aside, whatever you can do to help teach your child empathy, maybe role play, say, "Hey, I'm about to say something really mean to you. It's not true, but how would you respond?" Or you're like, "Your pants are ugly," you know? That might make them feel a little taken aback, and it's like, I was kidding, 'cause I'm your parent, I love you, but, like, just think about how your words, spoken or typed, affect somebody else, It's the do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Just don't. Um, your children need to know that if they're being bullied, it's not something they need to suffer with in silence. Um, I think a lot of kids are afraid to tell you, the parent, because they think you're gonna freak out. They think you're gonna immediately call the other parent and, rat them out. They don't want you to make that issue worse. But sometimes parents actually need to get involved because the bullying can be so incessant that it negatively infects your child's mental health, so that it goes from just a bullying issue to a self-harm, suicide, depression, anxiety issue. There are laws meant to protect children and adults from bullying and online harassment. So look up those cyberbullying laws in your area. Um, but we need to teach our children to speak up, to be an upstander. If they see somebody being unkind to somebody else, be that light that source of light that says, "Hey, that's not okay. That's not cool. Don't do that." And then finally, because this could be a whole podcast just on bullying. Um, it's helpful to understand that hurt people hurt people. So while we a lot of times tend to fear the bully, if we can switch that narrative and just feel sorry for them, like, gosh, who hurt you? You know, what happened to you? It might help the child to fully understand the situation.
Which speaks to, I had a guest on about a year or so ago, a professor from the University of Michigan, who wrote a book on emotional intelligence. And she talked about that this generation is, I don't know how they quantified it, has the lowest emotional intelligence score of any generation previously recorded in history. And
Mhm.
the direct link was the amount of social media use and the two-dimensional, um, communication as opposed to uh, that one-on-one relationships with individuals. And it's reflected in our society how people behave. They act out. They break things. They yell. There's no even attempt at discourse, dialogue, or even the attempt to understand the person in front of you or to listen, and to, as you mentioned, create a little bit of empathy for the individual. And so uh, she talks specifically that the biggest contributor to that has been the use of digital media.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, none of this is shocking. It makes sense, and that's I keep coming back to just common sense, like, who was the first adult that said it was okay for the kids in the classroom to have smartphones? Like, that was not that was not a good choice, right? So let's just dial it back and really get back to basics of, like, what is normal, healthy human development. Um, how can we help optimize this precious fleeting window that we have of childhood and teenage years where there's so much to learn, um, and save being in front of a screen for 8 hours a day if you have to for adulthood.
Sure. I think some states and school districts are now putting limits or removing cell phones from the classroom, which I'm surprised it took this long. I know there are other states that are resisting that. Maybe that's a lobbying effort. I'm not really sure. Telecom lobbying effort. Not really sure. So let me ask you. I was at the soccer park this past weekend watching my granddaughter play. And she's 7. I'm
Oh.
watching 8-year-olds and 9-year-olds and even younger with their own cell phone. What's
Mhm.
your thought on, you know, is there a universal understanding of what is an appropriate age where kids can have their own cell phone, or is it individual based on their own maturity level and things like that?
I'm so glad you asked this. It's the most common question I get. If you get your child a safer smartphone that lets you be in control of who they can communicate with and what they can access online and for how long, any age is fine. You can give it to a first grader, or a kindergartner. But that's a big, big caveat of if it's a safer smartphone. Now, full disclosure, I'm the CMO of a tech company that makes a safer smartphone for kids. And that's why I can say this because we built our smartphone to be the safest smartphone for kids. Um, but again, that's with the major asterisk of make sure they're not able to access certain websites, certain apps, overnight tech usage, setting those screen time limits. Everybody in the world shouldn't be able to call them in and they should not be able to dial everybody out, right? Just mom, dad, etc. So you can give your child a safer smartphone at any age with the right limitations. If you just want to give a child a blanket iPhone or Android that isn't built for kids, please, please, please do not do that until at least 8th grade, at least.
I'd seen and watched an interview with one of the tech CEOs, and he had said he does not allow his kids to have a cell phone. And he said he wouldn't allow them until 16. And the interviewer rightly said, "Well, why are you marketing and promoting this to other people's kids if you don't feel like it's healthy behavior for your children?" And to listen to this guy kind of back up and, rationalize his decision. But I've heard that, 16 maybe is a good age.
16
You
for
had said
social media.
social
Yeah.
media. Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's yeah, 13 for, again, like, smartphone that
Sure.
isn't, like, and even then, it's yeah. But social media, 16. And you don't take my word for it. Take, Jonathan Haidt of The Anxious Generation. He did all the research. The book will go into that.
So what if your teenage 14-year-old says, "Mom, come on, all my friends have one. I just want to chat back and forth with them. Like I'm the only one who doesn't have it. Like I'm not cool. I'm not getting invited to the parties or whatever." I'm sure that's the pressure that the parents are being put under, even if they, intentionally want to make sure they're making good decisions and um, not expose their kids to it.
Yeah, that's the number one argument, um, that I hear from both parents who are like, "But my kid said this," or kids that want something badly are the best salespeople for that thing, right? And what I will say is that you do want your child to be left out. You do want them to be left out of the bullying, the depression and disordered eating related content, the predation, the graphic violent sexual content, the drug dealers, the trafficking, the sextortion, all of that. You do want them to be left out of it. If you let them have access to social media, you're letting them have access to all of that. And I don't think that is a good parenting decision. Um, you can also make sure that your child will not be left out of healthy social interactions by making sure they're actually going places in real life, right? They're not just in their room gaming. They are going to soccer or baseball or music lessons or dance class or Girl or Boy Scout or church or synagogue or whatever. Like, get them out of the house, interacting with other peers, and making sure that their true friends are including them at least via text, right? Like, they can have a smartphone that can text with friends and they can say, "Hey, I know you're not on Snapchat, but we're all meeting up at this Starbucks. Come meet us."
Yeah, I think some of it too is I don't know what the impetus is behind it. Maybe because both parents are working, they're not spending enough time. There's the guilt associated with it. I think a lot of parents want to be their kids' friends, and they
Yes.
fail to recognize that your job is to be a parent. If you don't like me, I get it, but you'll appreciate me and thank me later on for being the parent in the room. As you mentioned so eloquently before, the prefrontal cortex is not developed until you're 20. They don't have the intellectual capacity to make those decisions. And so that's why we're the parent and they're the kid. And what I have found is, with my kids, there was a lot of decisions that my wife and I made they were not happy with, but now in adulthood, they're really appreciative we made those decisions.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is your kids are gonna be so mad, so frustrated with you. And, like, that's okay. It's okay to make a good decision for your child's mental and physical health that they're not okay with. That's your job, is to be the parent, not their friend. Um, and I have yet to meet a single parent, one single parent, and I've been at this for a very long time, who says, "You know what? I waited too long. I should have given my kid access sooner." Not one. Flip side, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of parents have expressed the wish that they would have waited a little bit longer. So you can't argue with those facts. You just have to stay strong. It's not easy. It's not easy, but you have to stay strong.
No one ever said parenting was going to be easy.
No.
It's the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, and I've done a lot of
Ever,
things.
ever. Oh my gosh.
I also want to touch on because you mentioned it a couple times. Anxiety and depression rates for kids is at an all-time high. Kids on antidepressants, anti-anxiety medication is just absolutely through the roof, and that's not a healthy way to grow up. And again, if we can create a healthy environment for them and create safeguards, protect them, we can mitigate so much of this. this wasn't a common thing when I was growing up, probably when you were growing up. I mean, how many kids did you know who were on antidepressant medication? Now it seems like I think the last number I had heard was over 60% of teens are either on an anti-anxiety or anti-depressant medication.
I don't know the stats on how many children are on prescription medicines for anxiety and depression, but I do know that it's, much higher than it was when I was growing up, and sure, there's a part of it that can be attributed to just better diagnosis, early diagnosis, more tools, more awareness, but I definitely think that societally, we have done our children a disservice by not helping them to build resilience. Not everything requires a pill. Not every tough situation needs to be avoided. But it's hard. It's very, very hard.
And two, with social media, there's so much glam out there and these unrealistic expectations of what their life should be. They see their friends or other people and they're in that, that FOMO, that compare and contrast, and they feel like they're less than.
Yes.
Somehow they're not
Yes.
complete, right?
100%. I mean, I couldn't imagine growing up as an 8th grader or a 12th grader trying to compare my growing body to one that had filters, that made everything perfect. No cellulite, no acne, white teeth, everybody's got a six-pack ab. It's like, "No, that's not realistic." And that the children are, generating their sense of self-worth and confidence off of likes and follows and comments. What a world. What a world. We have got to help our children build confidence in their natural abilities and things that matter. And again, that's very hard to do when you allow them to have social media before 16.
Okay, I think we've done a good job of establishing, you know, what the issues are, giving some safeguards, some recommendations. What other some good resources for parents who want to do additional research and understand this at a deeper level? So when little Johnny or Susie comes to them, they can be armed with facts. Although arguing logic with emotion with a 14-year-old is never really a very positive outcome, but at least you
True.
can feel good about your decision knowing you've made the right decision, irregardless whether they agree with it or not.
Yeah, I would say that I needed this, and it's been very helpful for me, which was a Facebook group called Parenting in a Tech World. So in 2017, I created a Facebook group because my son at the time was asking me for a phone and asking me for Snapchat and asking me for all these things. And I'm like, golly, I work in this space and I don't even know the right thing to do. So fast forward to today, and it now has over 600,000 parents in it. So if you're on Facebook and you would like a free community, just talk through these things with other people who have been there and done that, you can check out that group. Um, if you're interested in safer tech for your family, whether it's a safer smartphone or smartwatch for kids or a safer router, etc. You can go to bark.us. That's the company I mentioned, Bark Technologies, that keeps kids safer online. And if you want to connect with me, I have a super unique name. You can just go to Google, type in Titania Jordan, and I think I'm one of two in the world. So you'll be able to find me very easily.
I mispronounced your name, so I apologize, Titania.
It's totally fine. I get all kinds of things
I'm
all
sure you
time.
do. I'm sure you do. Um, so if they were to purchase a phone through Bark, can they
Uh-huh.
use any self-service provider? Do they provide, with that phone, or are they, you have self-service through Bark?
So it comes with cell service. So the phone
Okay.
arrives with service built in, and that's part of the monthly plan. So you don't have to worry about adding it to whoever you have your cell phone service through. And when you go to bark.us and you're trying to pick the right phone plan, you'll be served a coverage map to make sure you have service in your area before you order. But it's we have very, very good coverage across the US. So most people should be able to have it.
So, explain to my listeners all the things that the phone's capable of doing as far as, keeping, online use for kids safe.
Sure. So I'll just start with the Bark phone. So it's super customizable. It can be as limited or as open of a smartphone as you would like. It's an Android device, because Androids are just much safer for children than Apple devices. Um, it will automatically scan for concerning content. So our algorithm that's baked into the phone will scan text, emails, social media, apps for potential dangers. And when they find something, it'll send you an alert via text or email. Um, you can also track location. The parental controls are tamper proof. If you only want your child to be able to call and text from the phone, they can do that. Or if you want them to be able to use, a browser or download certain apps, you can do that. If you want them to be able to use the camera, let's say when they're out exploring nature and taking pictures of things, but let's say not use it when they're at a sleepover, you can turn the camera on and off. Um, it's amazing. It's, with the screen time limits, blocking access to certain websites and apps. Um, it's really a game changer when it comes to the ability for your child to have safer tech. And I have one over here, um, that I'll show you. So it's not powered on, but so this is the Bark phone. This is my iPhone, and it looks, it's super sleek. It's a great phone. So kids won't it won't be like, oh, you have a kid phone. It's just like it's a
Yeah,
smartphone. So
sure.
um, yeah, and so, the Bark watch, um, is much safer for kids than, let's say, an Apple Watch. I know a lot of parents think that's a safer option, but it's not, because kids can still get online if you don't set it up right. And the Bark watch monitors text, tracks location, manages contacts. There's no social media. There's no games. There is step count. So it's great, to be able to have your child have a little bit of freedom, but also be able to contact them in case of emergency and vice versa.
Does it also provide, like you had mentioned, you guys can track and see the data and such? Do parents have access to like a monthly report as well?
You get, a weekly report,
Okay.
um, of all kinds of things, and again, if there is a danger, you'll get an email and a text, right away. If you with the Bark phone and the Bark watch, you have to go through the process of adding contacts for approval. So people can't just randomly text your kid. But let's say you've added your child's 3 best friends as approved contacts, and in some for some way or reason, there's drama, right? And so there's some bullying going on. Bark is gonna send you an alert and let you know, "Hey, there's some bullying happening with this person. Here's what you need to know." And that happens on the watch and the phone.
It's wonderful. Does it block spam calls too?
Yes, because it's not an approved contact.
Sure. I think I might get one.
Oh, no. My dad wants one.
Good Lord. Wow. Yeah. I mean, it's like 5 or 6 a day. Um, I mean, it's great. How long is the, Bark phone, how long ago did it launch?
So our company started in 2015, and we launched the phone about 3 years ago.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's growing very quickly.
It has been incredible, the response. This is what parents have been waiting for. They're like, "We want our kid to have connectivity, but we don't like the options that are out there." So our CTO, our Chief Technical Officer, Brandon Hilgert, got to work building this phone for his own 2 children. He's like, "My kids aren't getting a smartphone until I can build one that I feel good about giving them." So, and that's what they have.
It's great. He has that capacity to do so, and now
I
he's
know,
done
right?
so for every other family, so that's great. That's absolutely
Yeah.
great. What is if you mind telling, what is the price point?
Yeah. So, let me look it up because it changes as we change things around with our growth
Mhm.
team. And you can buy it outright on Amazon if you wanna pay full price, or if you like sort of a monthly plan sort of thing, um, per our website, um, I think it's, starts at 39 a month, 49 a month, and 59 a month. as of today.
Hmm.
Sometimes those prices go down $10, up $10, et cetera, as we um, experiment with the best pricing model. But as of today, 39, 49, 59 a month, depending on, how much data your kid needs and what sort of things they need to access.
It sounds like a very, very nominal investment to protect your child's future and well-being.
I would have to agree with you.
So really, really informative. I'm very, very grateful you came on. I know that this is a conversation that's being had around a lot of dinner tables and a lot of parent meetings and so on and so forth, because it's the issue of the day when it comes to raising kids. I mean, you're going to face it at some point, whether you have a 2-year-old or a 12-year-old. You're going to face it at some point, so you might as well get ahead of it and be prepared, and particularly, have a united front as mom and dad, or the parent or the caregivers, of how you're going to approach this. Because if one's on one page and the other's on another page, boy, you're in for a lot of trouble because they're going to play you and manipulate you. So I think this is a really important thing to do that work in advance.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if you need encouragement for how to stay strong and how to delay when it seems like nobody else is and your kid is the only kid, feel free to pick up my book, Parental Control, because it's the advice I needed. I wish Titania today could go back in time 10 years to Titania then when she had a 6-year-old son and tell her all of these things. It's not easy, but you can do it. And please don't make the same mistakes I did. My son's 16 now, and there are things I wish I could do over, and I can't. But hopefully, you all listening and watching can.
Yeah, no question about it. So, Titania, thank you so much. Again, guys, it's the name of the book is Parental Control: A Guide to Raising Balanced Kids in the Digital Era. The website is bark.us, bark.us, and do your research and make sure that you're doing everything you can to protect your kids, because there's a lot of nefarious actors out there. And not the least of which is the social media companies who want your kids' eyes, ears, hearts, and brains, and unfortunately, not for all good purposes. So, we love our kids and we want to protect them. You got to protect them in the digital era just the same. So, thanks again, Titania. Appreciate your time and effort and all the work that you're doing. It's very, very important work.
Thank you so much.
Triple P Nation, that is today's show. And as like I always say, you be you, just be the best you. And I promise you will empower your dreams, ignite your passion, and accelerate your prosperity. Until next week, be well.